just kind of want to gauge the level of enthusiasm we're doing here. And you've seen it twice. Stay standing. Everybody else can start to sit down. 3 times. 4 times. 5 times. 15 times. No, let's see. 10 times.
Okay, I did not.
Oh my God! We've got some serious fans here. Well, I'm glad we could do this. This is really. I don't know if this group has been together yet for a Q&A. I'm not going to count up to 100, but we got you guys were standing for 10 times. Okay, this is the right crowd. What I'd like to do before we dive into my questions is I kind of want you to each give us just a little bit, a little sense of yourselves. By which I mean the coming into this project. What was your background? Well, let's keep this short, but it's kind of like if you were, introducing yourself at a cocktail party. What are the, what are the credits that we kind of need to know, or maybe the background that we need to know, just so we get a little bit better sense of the 5 personalities on the stage here. We'll kind of go down the row. So I'll start with you, Michelle.
So I've been in animation for 23 years. Before this, I was on Vivo. So K-pop was my second musical. What really drew me to the film was the story, Maggie, foretelling an authentic story, and to work with 2 young, crazy directors. We didn't know we were crazy then.
We tricked you.
All right, let's hear from the crazy directors. Chris, tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, I've been in animation for 23 years. We're so old, you guys. I started out as a production designer, got into writing and directing. The whole time I was also kind of a musician, so this project was unique in that it presented kind of a chance to use everything I felt I'd learned in the first 40 years of my life.
And this is your second feature for Sony Animation, where you've done Wish Dragon prior to this.
That's right. That's right.
Great. Maggie.
So I had been working in the animation industry at the time where this pitch came to my mind about 14 years, and I'd always wanted to see animation through Korean culture through the lens of animation, just something set in Korean culture that's really celebrated it. And I thought, oh, that'd be such a great thing to work on. And I was a story artist kind of my whole career, and never came, across that. And so when it came time for me to get into the directing role, I came up with a pitch that was around Korean culture and Korean demons, and somehow just landed on this weird idea of K-pop demon hunters and pitched it to a producer, and here we are, 7 years later.
I'm Helen. I was one of the production designers, and I was an anime kid who spent most of my time working at Disney Animation, and so this project gave me a chance to dive into what it meant to work with something a little bit more like Eastern flavored and Eastern aesthetics. And K-pop's a perfect vehicle, and I've known Maggie for 10 years, and so it just, it's a unique blend of elements.
Great. Josh?
My name is Joshua Beveridge. I was the animation director on K-pop Demon Hunters. I've just crossed the 20-year mark this year, all at one company, Sony Pictures. And I like to bounce back and forth between live action and animation, through all of that. My favorite thing about animation is trying to figure out something new. Most notably in my career, the greatest project is Spider-Verse. Trying to figure something out.
Great. So let's go back a little bit to the germ of the idea. So we're going to zero in on you for a moment, Maggie, because it's based on interviews you've done, it sounds like it's a fairly long journey, 7 years or so, since that. That suggests to me that maybe you didn't have visionaries who immediately got the concept or something. Was it kind of an uphill battle at first, or what did it feel like early on pitching this concept?
I'd love to say that it was, because that sounds much more cool, but it really wasn't. So both Chris and I have worked with Aaron Warner, who produced Wish Dragon, and when Aaron was rolling off of that, loved that experience of working with a director, a writer-director, and something that had more of an international perspective. And so he asked me, hey, do you have a pitch that you can, do you have something, do you have any ideas? And I said, yeah, of course, even though I didn't have anything. And my husband and I, who's right here, he, we just, yay husband! So our kid was sleeping in the back seat one day, and as we do, we just drive around the neighborhood to let the kids sleep, and we were like, well, let's come up with a pitch for Aaron. And I had a few ideas about Korean demons and this type of female character, wanting to do something kind of heroic, and he was like, why don't you put those together? And it became this demon hunter story, and it still didn't feel quite enough. And we just went down the list of Korean things and just landed on K-pop. And when we added that together, it just felt fun and exciting. And we always we truly believe in an elevator pitch, something very simple that you can get somebody really excited just from the concept alone. And it excited us. So the next day we pitched it to Aaron, and he was like, I love it, let's do this. And so the next week, I thought he was joking, but the next week he had a deal ready, and so we were just off to the races. So it feels like a very kind of, it was an easy pitch, but it was 15 years of building a reputation and building a relationship with a really, really talented producer. And so yeah, that's kind of how it happened.
It's great that original brainstorming thing was with your husband, because otherwise there would be a very expensive lawsuit happening. It was a great idea to put these two things together.
Oh no, that could have been
Not too late, man.
I take it back. I didn't think that, or I'm curious, kind of the team's connections to K-pop, because it's quite clear that the audience connection to K-pop has been a huge part of the phenomenon this has become. But to have distilled and incorporated so many of the characteristics, not just of the music, but of that culture. Who was kind of the leader in terms of the K-pop dimension of it all? It sounds like maybe the demon dimension, we can come back to, was kind of early in your head, but the music is such a big part of this.
The K-pop of it all, we felt the pressure of it to really satisfy the fans, because K-pop is very specific. And so there were certain things that we knew that the story needed to do. So one of the most beautiful things I think about is very unique to K-pop is the relationship between the performer and the audience, and because we knew that was integrated into the mythology of this energy being created between performer and an audience, and really visualizing that energy and that becoming the whole moon, and the fans being needed to protect the world. So that was already integrated into the mythology, so we were great, we already did that. And so that was a big piece of the puzzle, and the rest of it, I think, we weren't so, we didn't feel super pressured about the K-pop stuff, but it was kind of our North Star in everything that we did. So every visual, every music, every decision we made was to serve a story, but also it had to pass the cool factor of K-pop. And so that was kind of that was kind of our benchmark, and that was what was important to us. And also, more so, just the authenticity of Korean culture. That was more important to me, and then it became important for everybody else too. So those were kind of our two North Stars, I would say.
Let's elaborate on the Korean culture thing, and anyone can jump in, but I realize, in some ways, this idea originated with you, so it makes sense to hear from you. I gather that there was a kind of pilgrimage to go to Korea to kind of absorb that. Obviously, here in America, here in Los Angeles, you can really kind of interact with Korean culture, but to go there is to be immersed in it. Tell us about how you put that together. Who from the team was on that junket, and what you were studying, to sort of inform what we get.
We all went except Josh.
Yeah.
You guys have gone to Blackpink concert instead.
Oh, that's fair.
So what were you looking for? Was it like early enough that it would inform the story, or was it more kind of like, you know, to make sure that you're being authentic to the world and that it's going to be, you know, production design, costumes, you know, that kind of element, or all of the above, I assume?
Oh my gosh, I just love Zoe. Yeah, Zoe.
There's some cosplay going on in this room.
Yes, yes. So when we did the research trip, we had already written a first draft, so a lot of it was like location scouting. Like we actually hired a location scout team, and so we visited all the locations, and it was kind of like for a lot of us, like me, who had been to a lot of those locations, and some of our Korean crew, it was just reassurance that we were representing it correctly, and a refresher. And for a lot of our crew, it was like just experiencing our culture. And then there was a lot of photographs taken by Helen of like bricks and like straw. And they're so important. Yeah, they're so important. Like all those little details, and all those little details are what the Korean audience picks up and has voiced. Like, wow, I did not like all the intricate details of this movie are crazy. And so all of that was very important to us. So that was a big part of our trip. We also did a lot of eating because food is very important to our characters, for us. So we bonded over food and we drank a lot. We didn't go karaoke though. We've never gone to karaoke together, which is so wild.
Making everyone remember to go to a Taekwondo demonstration.
Oh, that was pretty
house.
crazy. I've replaced it to karaoke.
Helen, why don't you add on a little bit here about kind of like what you got from that trip that you brought back and wouldn't have had maybe otherwise?
I'm actually not Korean, I'm Chinese, and so for me, it was really important to go and to take everything in and make sure that I was representing Maggie and Korean culture correctly and pick up on things that would just add that layer of authenticity. Like for example, in Jeju, volcanic rocks is a huge part of the way that they construct their architecture. They use it for their walkways, and it's just a detail that, you know, we never focus on, but it's there. And it's and I know you make fun of it, but yeah, like when you build a city, after working on so many of these animated movies, the part where it really feels like that place is in what's on the walkways and the light fixtures and even the writing on the streets. All of that stuff matters.
Here, here.
Patronize me.
When I went to the concert, all I did was watch the audience.
I know, that was kind of amazing.
No, but you're right. Like you guys have to, you know, this is not experiencing it; it's researching it. It's immersing yourself.
Yeah, it's a real location, and we wanted to represent it correctly. Yeah, that was really
Like we learned that there's not that many trash cans on the
there's
streets of
actually
Seoul.
not, yeah.
Michelle, go ahead.
I think another big part of our trip was meeting with our future partners. You know, actually at the time we had already sealed the deal with the Black Label, and one of our choreographers, Lee Jung. So it was really a great experience to actually meet them in person and talk about the movie, and it was kind of a launch into the start of our music and song process, which, you know, as Maggie elaborated, you know, for me especially, like I wasn't a huge, I didn't know K-pop that well, but I have many years of music experience. Like I love music, so for me, and I think too for Chris and for a lot of people on the show who weren't familiar with K-pop, for us it was just like we just need to make good songs, and that's what we pressed on. Maggie and Chris were really just like relentless. Like this has to be right, and yeah, you know, at times we were like, holy shit, you know, it was hard, but you know, I'm so proud.
Can we
like,
be kind of specific about that? Because that, you know, the music is obviously kind of like not only the backbone, but it's kind of like the thing that can live outside of the movie. You know, it's like
Yeah.
people can kind of relive it, and it's had this life, you know, kind of on the pop charts and everything. But it's about getting it right. One thing that I think a lot of people who love K-pop recognize about it is it's not innovating. You're not like throwing something really challenging at people, like the next level of the future of K-pop. You're really kind of synthesizing what people already love about, the groups that are out there, but you have to do it in a way, because that form of music is evolving super fast, like year to year, it's like it's changing, so I'm just kind of curious, like, how do you do things that kind of like sound like they've always been in the world and represent K-pop? I feel like that's kind of what we're hearing. Things that are adjacent to, bands. Part of it sounds like working with Black Label, actual K-pop, super brains. But who wants to take the? Chris, you've been so silent. I don't know if you're the right person to do this. But,
He definitely is.
I love talking about the music. Well, yeah, I think one thing that's true about K-pop is it is an incredible innovator and ingester of all kinds of musical ideas, and it has a very fluid identity and always has. So, and to Michelle's point, I think K-pop is really popular in the world right now because it's really good. It's like amongst the best pop music, and people do not care where it comes from, they just want great music. So I think that was kind of our approach as when we were developing the songs, I think we did two things that were most important. One was we really wanted to have them have story purpose in the way that a song typically does in a movie. It is advancing the story. Every verse is like an exchange of dialogue. And when you write a screenplay, you're ruthless about that. You do not repeat yourself. You advance the conversation, you advance the plot, you always move things forward. So we had that level of kind of storytelling scrutiny to the songs, and we would make these long Google Docs. It was like 5 pages long for a song like Golden, and it was like monologues of Rumi talking about what she felt like before she found this gift, before she found Mir and Zoe, what it meant to her personally to make the Golden Homeroom. Incredibly pedantic and literal, not at all like a pop song. And then we would almost flip the page over and we would come up with like metaphors about what is the pop lyric way of saying this. So instead of singing, "Someday I wish the Golden Homeland would be here," which you just can't sing in a pop song, right? It's no longer a pop song, it's something else. We would say, well, it's like, let's use golden as a metaphor. I'm gonna be golden. And what the bet, I think, was, as musical lovers and storytellers, was that the audience would be able to hear these pop songs, which now could function as a pop song because they were poetic and metaphorical and had flow and they were just pops. but because we had fed the story into the lyrics in nice ways, that they would understand the subtext of all of it and they would fill them in as complete scenes. And we had no idea if that would work. But that was the I think the innovation that I think we're proud of is doing both.
I don't want to cut you off, so Maggie, go ahead. What's interesting to me about what you said is the thing that's so smart about the way that music works is we hear it more than one time, and it becomes more. It takes on levels, and that's not something that pop songs ever get to do. Like the way Takedown has multiple kind of emotions depending on where it lands in the story. So that just makes me realize what looks like pop is quite kind of sophisticated.
And I think what you get kind of, if you do it well and if you create a song and and a melody that's great, then you get extra points on the emotion, right? Because now your feelings are elevated because of the melody and the music and all of that. And we actually realized on our Europe trip when we were doing so many of these talks that the music was so difficult because we actually wrote it more times than we wrote scenes, or just as much, because we had to do not just one pass of what Chris was talking about, the 5-page whatever. We did a few versions of that. It kept changing. We didn't nail it the first time. And so we would do that version a few times, and then when we got the pop lyrics in, we would revise those a bunch of times too. So it was a lot of iterating, just as much as we iterated on scenes. So we were very much involved in the writing, and we didn't write but then sometimes we would scrutinize one word in a verse because it held so much meaning. And like Chris said, we didn't let go of anything in the movie. even
Can you,
a word
like-
of dialogue.
I like when detail, like, can you remember an example?
Yeah. The
Yeah,
golden one?
The mantra which Mark sounded like an EJ.
Oh, I haven't.
Oh yeah, there's so many because it's
Let's
like
do both.
yeah.
We're talking to people who've seen this 10
Yeah,
years.
that's right. You probably could tell us. But like a good screenplay has echoes. It has repeated thematic language. It has an idea that means one thing in Act 1, another in Act 3, and there's a poetry to that. Good storytelling. EJ and Mark wrote this mantra, which was "We are hunters, voices strong, slaying demons with our song, fix the world and make it right when darkness finally meets the light." And we had launched them on the assignment of like encapsulate the mission of Rumi and the hunters, but also encapsulate the contradiction of what Rumi's misguided life worldview, which is I'm supposed to fix the world, but in order to do that, I gotta fix who I am because I'm fundamentally broken. And then within that, when the darkness meets the light, for most of the movie, Rumi understands that to mean when the light comes in and abolishes the darkness, yay, victory, purity, I'm fixed. But actually it has to do with her reconciling her half-demon and her human animal. So it's a reconciliation of her darkness and her light. And that's what the final song is about. So that, in order to write that lyric, we had to understand what Rumi's journey was. We had to understand how we could essentially tell the audience what her upbringing was through one little paragraph, one little poem. And then that could be something we use in Act 3, that she re-enters the stadium and repeats it, and it's almost a fake out at that moment. So, and I'm sure you have other ones, but that kind of, to me, that was really beautiful language that they come up with that is essentially part of the screenplay.
That's great. Maggie, do you remember when where you kind of pivoted on a word or something?
Well, the one that I'm going to talk about is kind of silly. Thanks, Chris. We're talking about silly things. I think it was like
The movie encompasses
Yeah.
I know.
They're all important.
This is the balance. Is we get this and then we get me. Sometimes it's nice and stuff. Well, I was going to talk about just the golden lyric of Mira. I think we had a line where she says, "Selling out every day" was one of the lines, and we're like, that's not. I mean, like, and it was a lyric to say like we sell out concerts every day, but then it also comes off as like selling out every day. And so we took that opportunity to shift to a Korean lyric, which is "Good option on stage," which is like endlessly on stage. So there's things like that that we kind of just tweak, and even the songwriter, I think even Audrey was talking about it, where she asked, she was like, were there lyrics that had changed that we don't know about? We're like, yeah, there are a few things, yeah, a lot, yeah.
That macaronic quality of like having the Korean lines in there is kind of like a secret weapon for you guys.
Totally, yes, yeah. It just like I love and I I wish we had put more Korean lyrics into the songs, but it was a choice that we made because our songs carry so much narrative. So it felt like that was the choice we made.
I'm hearing an opportunity to do something maybe a little differently for 2, 3, 5 in the series. It's like you can kind of build up on that. Michelle, I can tell you.
Yeah, I think I just want to explain too that like we were very lucky that Sony has a great head of music, Spring Aspers, that helped us with finding an executive music producer, Ian Eisendrath, who comes from musical theater and was dedicated his life to us the last 3 years and helped with bridging that gap, like between the musical theater and then we had 3 music teams and there's 2 other teams outside of the Black Label that we were working with to help, create this combination of a pop song.
Ask us horribly hard questions.
Oh, that's
Maggie and
another
I
thing.
always joke that we'd be in a story meeting and we'd be all stumped on something. We'd be like, oh shit, we have a music meeting, yay! Go to the music meeting and Ian's like asking us all these story questions and we're like, no! Music meeting became a story meeting.
Wait, detail, what's a music, like a story question that comes from the music side, just so we understand what you're talking about. Like where they're
All of them, like the duet, Like, what is,
Elaborate on that, what do they need to know to sort of do that right? That's my favorite song. I know it's not the poppiest one, but I love just that dynamic.
I mean, he definitely, I think it was a thing, in some ways it was an easier song for us because we
It was,
kind of
yes.
written it as a dialogue scene in the past. And it was about this recognition between Rumi and Jinu that having basically lived alone with shameful feelings about themselves, starting to talk about it to each other had a healing effect. And neither of them had expected that, neither of them knew why it was happening. It was not how this was supposed to go. And so Ian would ask very specific questions about okay, but if you're Rumi and you're exploring that idea, you're finding your way to it, it might first start as an external thought, like, I don't understand why, but when I'm around you, I feel like my voice is better, which would lead to, because maybe I think there's something going on here, and there's something about the way you make me feel, which would lead to articulating how he makes her feel, which would then force him to respond. And that's just good writing, but Ian is coming at the song through the lens of like, it needs to progress, it needs to have a cause and effect. And suddenly that makes a better song, but it also makes like a emotionally logical scene.
I mean, one of the biggest like drama moments we had on our movie was that moment where Rumi's singing in front of the mirror in the backstage area. So there was a version of that was much longer, and it was she was more revealing about how she felt about herself, and we had two camps. It was like us, the directors, and then everybody else. Maybe not Michelle. I don't know. Michelle was neutral. She was kind of in the middle, trying to like, let's just get this movie done, guys. Where
We're out of time, kids.
yeah, because we felt like the lyrics were just too much. Like she almost
Too
completed
early.
her journey.
It was like too on the nose or something.
Well, it was on the nose, but it was also like her realizing that she was. What was it like? She was.
She was already at
She
the
was
midpoint.
already. Yeah, she was already like knew that she was like almost at the climax.
Yeah, she was singing about like getting rid of the shame that I feel.
Yeah. And becoming herself. Like
Yeah.
if I get rid of this, then I'll know.
Right, that's the resolution.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yes. So it was a little too early. So we're like, she's already saying this in Act 1 of the movie. We can't do this. And so we had a long back and forth about that. And so that was.
But that, I think what was so important about Ian's precision is that in order for the scenes to feel good as songs in the movie and feel as if they matter, then that emotional logic has to be there. And so the fact that he was demanding clarity from us at all times meant that we could go off and be poetic and poppy, and the audience would still understand how this related to the bigger arc, and that was critical, I think. And that's very musical theater, annoyingly to us.
You know, what's the coolest thing about this now that you have kind of put it back in theaters and it's been karaoke and we hear those same lyrics coming from the voices of audiences is like, there's empowerment in those songs too, and that wasn't even necessarily their job, but like that's that thing that like when they live on their own.
I mean, when we hear kids singing the jagged edges of
Jagged edges meet the light?
Yeah, jagged edges meet the light. The broken pieces are like, oh.
What broke when you're 5?
You have like accepted them. You have given them the tools. So because when they're teenagers, they're going to be feeling those
Broke
things.
into a million pieces, like, oh my gosh.
Okay, I want to get to the visual and the animation, but I think one last question kind of on this front is just the casting. Can we talk a little bit about, because like in Disney movies, you've got you've got kind of like two people playing each of them. You've got the kind of musical performer, and you've got the vocal performer. So that's kind of like double the challenge to find, I guess. Tell us a little bit about rather than going through everybody, maybe there's a character or an example that we can kind of like that illustrates the way that you went about it.
It was
kind of the
everybody.
same, yeah.
I mean, and even if it was difficult and challenging, I'm very, very proud that we really stuck to our guns with, finding authentic talent and, just started off with this long list. Like you're saying, we want them to be Korean, they need to speak English and Korean, and they need to sing. And after we did casting call around the world twice, and after going through, I think, everyone, we had hundreds of people, we found that was very difficult. So we realized at the time, and knowing that we wanted the songs to really sing, we would have to separate them.
Which is standard practice, it's what Disney does on all of these.
Yeah.
If the songs matter,
Yeah.
you want them done by pros, and they're great voices there too. But you want voice actors or actors to kind of interpret the emotions.
And which is difficult, for the singers. They're the singers that we have. And EJ just, obviously has an amazing voice, but the singers are pop singers. So when they get in the room to sing the songs that we have and emotion, they have to be in character in a way. So for them, it was difficult to learn how to sing in character and to emote. Ian was a great vocal director and vocal coach in the way that he really leaned in and he just is saying it over and over and over again.
I want to sing Maggie's praises a little bit too, just because it didn't occur to me until we were talking about this movie a lot, but we cast really late as part of the search. So for 2.5 years, 3 years, we had an animatic of the movie, a living, breathing version of the film in which Maggie was doing oftentimes the voices of all three girls, called Scratch. And the funny stuff, the emotional stuff, the sisterhood, and what that allowed us to do was continue to get more specific in the writing of who these girls were, get jokes to land perfectly before we'd even cast our actresses, and also just kind of prove the relationships out. And then we got these wonderful actresses in, and they connected so quickly to the characters, and then they brought another level to them all. But that we would not have been able to move the movie forward without voice talent, except we had one on the crew. And I think that's, again, it's hard for people to understand how much personal of oneself goes into these movies, but that, I think even Josh and I joke about, or Rad, Maggie's husband, when you watch the movie, you're like, it's Maggie, it's Maggie, it's Maggie, it's Maggie, it's Maggie.
At one point it was me. It was just me in a closet, just talking to myself.
Just the voice, just record
Yes.
and just animate.
Yes. It's like animation, and I just go there and it's just my face. Okay, just me making faces at people, and everyone's just watching me like this.
But also because we cast so late, Josh and his team had to animate not to Maggie's voice. So, which is not ideal, but with him and his team and the product, it was all to me it happened for a reason.
Yeah, we
It gave the
communicated
best
really well
product.
about what level we were trying to chase, so we could sandbox. Same with music, music still would work, but we could trust the BPMs and work to a certain state. You doing the shell game throughout the movie, it kind of gave us chances to step away and come back to it.
So, Josh, you've been silent so far. We're going to come back and grill you a little bit here. This is about the midway point, and I'm going to inject my favorite scene, but it's one that I think is one of the reasons, just as an animation fan, this movie excited me so much, because you guys are paying homage to Korean manhwa, the kind of the comics, the anime, but you're also innovating, and I'm not sure if the movie gets enough credit. So we're gonna roll about a minute or two of the movie, and then come back and start talking visuals.
Fans! We can't let them see us here! Wait, let's turn this down!
Pretty cool, but normal.
Oh yeah, come on. Take your time. 왠지 두근대는 밤이야. No, 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 no. 같이 달려가 볼까. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Just right. 시동에 걸어 웨이스 내 발에 어울려. 모든 것이 특별해 너 완전 어울려. 오고서 원하던
You guys are so gross.
너와 함께 하고 싶은 일들을 상상하는 게 요즘 내 일상이 되고 너의 즐거워하는 모습을 보고 있으면 자연스레 따라 웃고 있는 거 너의 행동에 설레어하고 뒤척이다가 지새운 맘이 많아지는데 이건 너가 봐도 사랑일 텐데 종일 함께 연질 Watch yourself.
Watch yourself!
Your song is like 24 jokes a minute, you know.
I've been waiting to talk about this scene for so long.
You're right to love this one.
Well, Maggie, let's start with you because, like, this movie, this scene plays with, you know, tropes that we've seen 100 times, and it invents all new solutions.
Well, okay, so we have to start by saying when this movie was first pitched, Christine Belson, the president of Sony Animation, said, "Let's objectify the crap out of these guys." So that was kind of our goal, to make really thirsty girls.
I mean, this is the reverse for one of the scene that we've all seen where the new girl walks into the classroom and the boy, you know,
Yes, yes.
basically getting a boner through the...
Yes. It's a lady boner. Or, you know, whatever, yeah, with corn. But
And it's like that, you know, the camera will be like...
Oh my gosh. Like, who said that? That's amazing. Yes.
Canon, I guess.
Yes, baby.
So this is the corner scene. And it's like, you know, the camera slow-mo tracks from the legs, up,
Yes.
up, whatever.
That was so hard to do. So was this our first scene that we did?
We did this 11
Oh, that's
seconds.
that's true. So officially, it's our second scene that we animated.
Wait, what was the first?
Was it 11 or 12-second scene of which we call Gear Up, where the girls are gearing up. That really quick, like heavy
It's
metal.
the
thing.
Rambo.
Yes,
sequence.
that is what the
Literally
Kyosaja
11
sign.
seconds.
So that's officially a sequence. So that was our first sequence that we animated, and so this was our real one, like first one.
Is that because it's essentially a proof of concept? You have to get this right, or?
I mean, it was just really. I think we thought that all the jokes were landing really well, and we also just really desperately wanted it in the movie. So I think we were like, let's just do this first. Get away with it.
All right, break it down for us, though. Like the two of you, it sounds like.
Do you want to talk about it? Just even.
Happily, yeah.
Yeah.
We were all, the animation team was ecstatic to be in this one because it touches on so many different things. And one of the hardest things on the movie, it's true that it was a proof of concept. Like, how are we gonna get these glamorous faces to also do these ridiculous things? Like, it's conceptually challenging, but even more, or equally technically challenging. We had to figure out a whole bunch of fancy little animation illusions to pull this off, like interchangeable faces, because they still have to work in soft lighting, like have form, all that stuff breaks all the rules of everything we've ever done before. Like for Spider-Verse, we had to be really graphic and black. This would be like gentle, have blooms and lights. So if you frame through that, it's riddled with little secrets of how we could let soft edges just creep in artistically only where we want it, and protect those graphic lines for the jokes to remain clear.
Well, to explain it a little bit, just for those who aren't animation pros, like one of the things we don't realize watching CG animation is that there's like, it has to obey physics in a way that hand-drawn doesn't. And so like every character is rigged and has a skeleton and it obeys, and it's hard to do what we talk about squash and stretch, or in this case, it's kind of like we're seeing anime/manga tricks being ported over. Like I remember on Turning Red, first examples of American computer animation adopting some of the eye tricks and things like this. But here, again, it's not just bringing them over, it's adding on or plussing.
Yeah, like to get those big mouths, that's basically it's a fake balloon floating a foot in front of the face, but it has to light under the same light in the same place. So we're doing like a lot of tricky math to make that
Like between the camera and the face, if you did another angle, it wouldn't work at all. Yeah.
horrifying.
That's why they don't move, she's just like frozen.
Right. Tell us more, I want tricks.
Like motion blur is a whole thing too, like having where and how much motion blur we're gonna, because we need long lenses and gentle blooms and like depth of field is important for K-dramas. That's the K-drama language. So like how do we have that, so we have like these little balls that the animators can control and place wherever they like, to let motion blur in the ear and not anywhere else. That was a thing we wanted to do.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say too, it was one of the first things that we tested from the very beginning and saw versions of. Like, there were animation tests, and then even Omar Smith, one of the sculptors, would actually sculpt to camera because of some of these expressions. And actually, I think we coined this term, Chris, you can, like a demi-chibi. So we had the version where it would go full on, like what you see in anime, but then what did it mean in a 3D context, and also be used in between for other things as well, and to make it really flexible. So that was one of the things as well. Like the fans used demi-chibi, which is kind of like a 2.5 chibi mode, and then
You know
there's
chibi,
full-
right? This is
Yeah.
a real thing, there's chibi, the kind of like the cutesy, kind of disproportionate version of it.
But all that stuff was like using the actual models, right? Because we had thought that these expressions are too extreme, so we would require a separate model that could do all this zany stuff. But
Yeah, it's like
They-
interchangeable parts. And we made it.
it was the potato head.
But like, one of the reasons I want to look at this is because we get to see it in slow motion, but like, you're doing those expressions the whole movie long, like when they have their little snack
Well,
break.
let's talk about the slow motion of it all, because that was a
Hard.
whole journey. So, because we're trying to pay homage to a very K-drama moment, which uses slow motion. And when we were doing this in animation, we realized it's not just slow motion, like live action. It's actually like, it's not just like a slow, it's just like, it was kind of like this kind of.
It's like a ramping to it.
Yeah, it's like a ramp to it, and because when we did it in
We call
slow,
it like fireworks.
yeah,
Slow-
fireworks. It was like,
Yeah.
that's what it needed in order to feel natural. Because if we just did slow mode, it just felt weird and it didn't feel right. It just also.
Also, like
strange.
animators' first passage would be like too overlappy and not
Yes.
just be like,
Yeah.
keep it simple.
Mhm.
Like this really
Yeah, yeah. Because we're also trying to figure out our style.
Which
while
is a
doing this.
kind of a recurring theme was in a lot of the K-drama stuff that we loved and the concert stuff and music video stuff we loved. They shoot a lot of coverage. If it's a K-drama and the guy's getting hit by a car, which is going to happen in every K-drama, even if they're set like 1,000 years ago. But they would just shoot the scene from a million angles, cover it, and then they just go and editorial and boop, 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 and we don't get any coverage in animation unless these poor souls make it for us. So we had to figure out the little pieces of this fully covered thing that we actually wanted, and then only animate those, but make it feel like we'd snipped film, and it was the same with the concerts and the music videos, and that was very, I don't know, I hadn't done it before, it definitely took some experimentation.
So an example might be like when we see the shoulders bump, we get it from a couple angles.
Multiple times, yeah, different angles.
Right.
And we deliberately were breaking continuity, not trying to make it linear and cut in different places, like the physics are.
But that was hard to
Yeah.
break continuity.
Yeah, because
Yes.
that's not how.
Yes, that's not how we're programmed to think.
And it's also not how the programs are programmed. I mean, like, there's something very literal-minded about computer animation that you then have to kind of like, it's just fascinating to see how people like reintroduce kind of 2D elements into this thing that's kind of, meant to conform to gravity and all these things. I want to talk a little bit about choreography outside of this scene, but like kind of elsewhere. There's obviously two kinds of choreography. There's the dancing, but there's also the fight choreography. Let's start with the fight choreography because the way that I read it, it seems to go off of, again, 2D animation like Powerpuff Girls or Speed Racer, that kind of like, you'll hit a pose, a keyframe, and kind of hold it. So it's like that kind of thing where someone can be like, flying through the air in their kind of martial arts pose, but what are your references? What are your, like, what was your, there's philosophy that goes behind these choices. There I'm thinking of maybe the subway scene is a good example where we're getting a lot of that.
Yeah, so that one's basically music. They're both music videos to fight choreography and also hitting story points. So like songs, like what needs to be featured, here it is. There's a lot of
Both the other one's the case
Sorry,
spot.
the
Bathhouse.
bathhouse. Yeah. We learned bathhouse we did first. On the train we did that. So we learned a lot more in the bathhouse. We had a lot of conversations early on because there was fight choreography that we started with. There was like footage of these fight choreographers. And you're sharing this and so saying what you loved and about them and highlighting different things, its influences, as well as sharing anime influences. But we learned something watching that. Some of those fight choreographers had done some K-drama training, idol training, and like in between the moves, they would do these like cute little adjustments, and they're like, that is what's way more important than how they punch or kick. That is what personality is, and like that's what we want to really show.
Dance fighting. It sounds so, like it could be so stupid, but we went to one of our, Helen mentioned them, they're called the K-Tigers, and they are Taekwondo masters and also K-pop dancers, and they mix it up, and they do these dancing and Taekwondo performances to pop music, and so we saw them in Seoul, and we all just started crying, because we're like, it's not stupid, it's really cool.
It wasn't like we were deliberately doing the actions they did. It was inspirational for what the goals were. We learned a lot. We had a couple of animators that were secret weapons.
Could you explain
So
like how
amazing.
Ryusuke and those guys, because they did it in a 2D shorthand,
Well,
but with a moving camera.
But also, I'm sure they saw, like, because we shared a bunch of reference, and for me, like, one of my favorite, like, action references was this movie, very, very super violent film called Villainous, which is a Korean film, and John Wick basically copies a lot of those. Kind of, I'm sorry, but it's true. So there's a
John
lot
Wick
of.
would be the first. I mean, John Wick, would be the first to admit that those are references for them.
Yeah, yes, and so, like, after watching John Wick, seeing that, like, oh my gosh, what? This is, and they use a lot of kind of, I don't know, like GoPro-y type of point of view kind of action, and
Let's
so,
try and break it down into 2D logic for how
Yeah.
can you do the whole inference. Those things complement each other. It wasn't the hardest bridge. It hits harder when you hold it a little bit more and stick the middle. Like Fine Live Action does all the time. Like Danny Boyle's dropping frames out of there. So it's harder.
Right. Now, I'm not entirely following this, and so I want you to kind of like explain a little bit. Let's, instead of talking about the subway one, let's talk about the bathhouse one, because there, it is more complicated. You have those 2D, when I say poses, I'm thinking like in Powerpuff Girls when they're like flying and they just don't change. It's cheaper to animate that way when you're doing kind of something like Speed Racer, but here we're doing it not to save money, we're doing it because it's iconic. But then you have an almost kind of bullet-timey effect of like, you know, the Matrix thing at the camera. What if you have someone kind of frozen in an action pose and the camera can kind of move through the space? Is that?
Yeah,
harder, yeah.
For those ones, we're giving the animator a lot of like ownership of the camera there, so that because it's a dance, there's a setup that the one's got to do. But for the actual how it freezes and how it goes in there, he's got to be animated. They've got to be animated together. Ryusuke was the person that was. We just kind of all got out of his way. He was like dialed into the taste.
well, he would block it out and animate it in 2D.
With a 3D camera. So
Yes.
you do a 2.5D pass of everything before you figure out the characters. He just forces the characters to do whatever it is. The story, he doesn't care what lenses it's on, that doesn't matter. He's gonna change the shape of the character to make it what it needs to be.
Great, okay. I want to make sure that the audience has a chance to ask some questions too. We'll give a few there. I'm gonna ask one more because I want to know about Sussy and Derpy, the two animal characters. So who wants to take that one? Or just kind of like, I mean, sidekicks, we're used to having them in these movies, but these two are so like so special and so. You win. This is
I
like
wish I
a
could show
chance.
Helen's painting.
Yeah.
You're good, you tell the story.
Okay, well, we knew that when we're doing our research and stuff, we came across these folk art that would feature very dumb-looking tigers. They were just very wall-eyed or cross-eyed, But they were gorgeous, yes. They were gorgeous paintings. And as a crew, we would just send them to each other, like, oh, look at this derpy tiger. And so we would try to like one up each other. And but then like I knew I wanted a tiger in the movie because it's the national animal of Korea, and so we wanted some tiger representation, but we also didn't want to just have a sidekick for no reason. Like we wanted it to serve a story purpose, and we needed a way for Jinu to reach out to Rumi. And it felt like odd for him to like text her or like come to her. Just like she's so old. Like does he have a cell phone? Like does she have like a carrier pigeon? I was like that sounded not right. And then Helen did this painting of Jinu, and we're like, why does he
You
look?
left it out?
Yeah. Why does he look so hot in this? Because he has like half his shirt is unbuttoned, but like, it's not just that. Because he was next to this like tiger statue, and it was turning into a real tiger, and so we were like, oh my gosh, he's so hot because he has a pet. And used this tiger as the messenger, and so it just became Derpy, of course, because we were calling it Derpy Tiger, and I mean, we struggled with that name too. We were like, do we just embrace this, or is this not great? But we embraced it, and everybody else has too, luckily. And so that's how Derpy was born. And my husband, actually, right there, talking about him a lot, but he designed Derpy. And he wasn't even assigned it. No.
He like sent an image of a tiger he drew, and I was like, that's it.
Can we just call it done? Can we just
Yeah,
send
is
this
it
to
just
modeling?
over? Like, and then we give it to Omar, and then that's it.
All right, crowd. Be tactical. These got to be good questions. Your hand went up fast. I'm going to give you my mic, so we can do it.
Hi, I'm Ilona. First off, I want to say thank you for making this majestic film. My nieces are obsessed with it, and best of luck for FYC. My question is it ever bittersweet knowing that Huntrix is fictional and that they can't see the impact they've had on the world and how much we love them?
Well, we get to hang out with EJ and Ray and Audrey in the last 3 months, and they are real.
Yeah.
They are incredibly
Yes.
they persona. They're so much like the real girls. It's weird and beautiful, and they're really moved. Actually, the voice actresses too.
Yeah.
I know Mei Hong, who does Mira's voice, speaking voice. She was doing some signing at the New York Comic Con, or no, the New York Anime Expo, and she had. And May is exactly like Mira. She's like, "What's up, dude? Yeah, it's cool." And then she's like, "Yeah." So I'm like signing, and this girl comes up to me with her mom, and the girl looks at me like I'm literally Mira, and it's a little weird. And I'm signing, and then her mom leans over and says, "You're Sailor Moon." And then I started to cry. So it's like, I think they're all experiencing a pretty awesome moment, being able to inhabit those. How cool is that? So, great.
Okay, I want to make sure someone in the back. So the mic's going to float. I'm going to empower you to choose who seems like responsible. Responsible questions.
Hi, I'm Ashley. Thank you so much for making a movie that resonates with everyone all over the world, and the songs are just awesome, so thank you for all your hard work. I also used to work in the industry at Disney and DreamWorks, and I wanted to ask, like, throughout the project, there's scenes that come and go, deleted scenes, and scenes that just didn't really work with the rest of the film. I was wondering which ones, like, maybe that you wish were in the movie that aren't anymore, or maybe like a song that didn't make it that you wish was there.
Nothing leaves this room, right?
There was a moment that was kind of like Rumi's, I don't know, turmoil, like her dark night of the soul. And it came after her kind of meeting with Celine. And we had it for a little bit. I don't even know that we fully screened it, but it felt like redundant. And we were just wondering why like why she would be in such like emotional, like, I don't know, in an emotional pit. And we had a little demo that accompanied it, which was really beautiful and sorrowful, but it felt like a little, it just felt emotionally not correct to have that moment and then go right into a climax. So we just took it out and just have, it's a very quick shot, and it was a very tricky one. It was one of the last ones that we did, but Rumi just coming to terms with the idea that her mom figure, Celine, will just never change and will never accept her, and it's just a close-up of her kind of coming to realization and then pooping away. And we thought like that was just a much more like strong version of her like just owning that instead of like wallowing in her sorrow. It just felt like a weird transition for this character to have, and then go right back into like warrior mode. So that's one that we cut.
Thank you.
Beautiful song.
I want a second one. Like, is there a song? Is there like that you like started with, or
Well, there was a song there, and so we.
Oh,
yes.
That would have been an entire. Sorry, I misunderstood.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't want to really shine a light on it, but yes, that was a song.
Okay. Let's see. There's like a beam of light falling on you, sir. So let me see if we can get.
I know, right?
Oh, it's like.
Real quick, will there be an
you,
art of
no,
book?
wait. You get a microphone.
Will there be an art of book? Please tell me yes. It has to be the show.
What's a detail that appears in the movie that kind of like you can almost like trace the thing back? You gave us a great example, I guess, for the tiger. Is there another that's just kind of like it? Because there's so much exploration that happens in that production art process. You know, like that gave you a gift that kind of took on a life of its own on screen.
I mean, Helen did a painting that probably in the first year that was Rumi. We didn't know exactly her costume or anything, but it was Rumi standing in the center of the frame. You guys have probably seen it online. There's a kind of whole moon terror behind her. Half of her is demonic and unshoveled, the other half is pop star. It's very like beautiful, and it was a kind of an iconic thing we were chasing, which was like at some point in the last third of this movie, we want this incredible character to be both powerful and truly unhinged and at a breaking point, like where we don't know if she's gonna be a force of good or bad. And it was such a great painting, and it made us all buy in on that. And I honestly feel like in the writing we chased the best solution, the best detailed version of the story that served that image to the very end.
Yeah.
We had a lot of attempts to land that moment, and they weren't effective. And finally, like Maggie's saying, the strongest version of Rumi emerged, which is somebody who wants to die and thinks she deserves to die, and has worked her whole life, and yet even in that moment is strong enough to be like, screw it, I will go on and I will find a new way to live. And that's one of those things where you ask somebody, can you give us a painting of like this vibe, and then whatever weird thing Helen does, whatever genius she has, it inspires you, and you hold on to it for years, and you have it on the wall or on your wallpaper on your laptop. Yeah, and it somehow represents what you're trying to achieve, even if it doesn't have any written words or anything. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I think like when you're doing a movie, it kind of tells you what it needs to be, like through the story, and you make all the visual decisions from that. And so the core thing of it being shame, it just felt like the images needed to feel like this person really believed that everything bad in the world is their fault. And like, and then even the fact that Gima's just a mouth is because he shames you, he berates you, that's his villain power. So like all these decisions in the movie are made very consciously to support the theme that the movie's trying to set up with Rumi's struggle.
So I've heard you say, Maggie, that one of the things that kind of happened in this process was kind of zeroing in on Rumi's story, but there's more to Mira and Zoe than we kind of entirely get in the movie. Like, what is an insight into each of their characters that people who've lived with this movie might like to know about them and might learn more about eventually?
I love how people wrap these questions up in different packages. figure out enough of their backstory in order to give everybody like a teeny little bit, just to understand like that they also feel like they didn't belong, and Huntrix is a place where they finally belong, and so they have to fight for this family. And I think, and I know that the fans are like, give us more backstory, but I also think we gave you guys just enough that you love these characters. And if you didn't understand that background, you wouldn't really fully love them. And that's all I can say now.
Let's hope we get to learn more about them in the future. Okay, I think we can squeeze in maybe one or two questions. Wait. You seem to be pretty enthusiastic, and you're in my line of sight.
Hi, friends. So I actually had the opportunity to interview EJ and Mark about 2 weeks ago now for Netflix, and something that they did let slip was that that little moment that the Saja Boys have was actually a full song. It is like the Lost Saja Boys song. I see your guys' faces clenching just a little bit, but I know you guys are bound by NDAs and the future projects coming, but is there anything you guys can tell me about that secret Saja Boy song, what was setting that up, or anything that you can speak on that? The silence is deafening.
It was another version of a song that would fit into that now sort
Earlier
of pop,
demo.
earlier demo. It was a very similar vibe, very poppy and fizzy, and when we were talking about it and exploring another option, that's kind of what we kept saying. We're like, it needs to be poppy and fizzy, and so it felt like the soda pop was kind of those lyrics were just, and because we also wanted it to be something food related, because the lyrics are about like, we're going to eat you, the demons are going to eat you, so that's why we wanted to just keep it kind of food related, and then Black Label pitched soda pop to go with that, and so we were like, great, this feels like the right choice. But it was very similar songs. Yeah, it wasn't completely different, or it wasn't like a new, different type of song, or didn't serve a different purpose or anything.
Which is kind of like the process, I think, as we've heard in variations of this, is like you explore a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to resurface. It's part of what stays. I realize we set up early on, maybe a place to end this is we've focused a lot on the K-pop and less on the other magic element. Let's just talk really quickly about kind of demons. Like demons this year, by the way, are like the secret sauce. I mean, like Demon Slayer has like broken the record for anime, like the thing that it crossed that $100 million box office thing. Obviously, I feel like people are coming more for the K-pop, but like staying for the demons. I don't know. It sounds like the idea started for you with that, and what was your instinct? Because it's clearly part of it's the combinations.
The reason I leaned into that initially is because I knew I wanted to do something Korean, culturally Korean, and come up with a pitch that was centered around that. And my husband's sister, oh man, I'm talking about you a lot. It just happens, I don't know. His sister at the time, when I first met them, she was like 5 years old. I met her when she was 4, and then she was about 5, and she was, and now she's a teenager, but she used to be like a very, very, very girly girl. Like she had curly strawberry blonde hair down to her back, and she always wore these like massive bows on her hair, and she loved Barbie, she has a room that's like sparkle pink wallpaper. Like that's how like girly she is. And I was talking to her one day, and she was like telling me about this movie that she watched over the weekend, and she was like, I was so scared. And I was like, oh, what movie did you watch? And she's like, we went to watch Maleficent, and I was just so scared watching that movie. And I said, I'm sorry. And she said, but I loved it. And I was like, oh, like I didn't expect that reaction from her. And when she said that, I kind of felt like, well, is there a way to like explore more like darker characters and a little bit of like a horror type of thing with animation that's more, we're always looking at something that's like, that spans a wide audience, right? We obviously don't think animation is only for children, but, and so that's kind of where it came up.
And so we try to like lean into a little bit of like horror, things like in the bathhouse when the guy's like, we see a little silhouette of him and then the demon coming. And we had a lot of discussions about whether that was too dark, but we were like, it's important for us to go there because we needed stakes for the movie.
You can get pretty violent if you put a lot of glitter on.
Yeah, that's also a minute. What do we call it?
Sparkle death.
Sparkle death, yeah.
Okay, that is all the time we have. You guys have really shared so much. We feel like the early adopters, right? We know that this movie's going to be there for the ages. And we want more of them. Okay, please stick around, do more Animation is Film stuff. This is the last day of the festival, but you guys have good taste if you made it this far. Let's hear it for the team.
Thank you, everyone. If you can please stay in your seats so our special guests can make their way out of the theater, that would be great. Thank you so much.